We're going to have a brief political panel today. We're going to hear from Matthew O'Toole from the SDLP, Nuala McAllister from the Alliance Party and Tómas O'Neill from Sinn Féin. As I mentioned earlier, the DUP and the Ulster Unionist reps had to go to a funeral today, so they will make it along to our next event. And then we're going to close proceedings with just a few words from Jane Sims from the Education Authority. So if Matthew and Nuala and Tómas would like to come up to the stage, please. Thank you. Okay, we're going to start proceedings with just some opening remarks from each one of you. So, Tómas, you're there to my right. Do you want to start off with just whatever you want to say?
Should have sat further away from you. Well, I suppose so my name's Tómas O'Neill. I'm one of the local councillors for Old Park Ward here, Sinn Féin. Went to school stone's throw away from here. Disappointed that they're not here. Give them stick. But it's been great. I've been here all day. Went to a couple of workshops. Went to Amanda's workshop on rise of far right in media, and then really lively and interesting debate on voting rights at 16, which really was brilliant. And it was glad to say I think there was only one person who had genuine reservations. Everybody else was all for it. So I've just really enjoyed. Really enjoyed the day. No, it's great, and it's great to see so many people, young people, actively interested in seeking their place in politics and in influencing the world around them, because that's where we have to be at. You know, if we talk about threats to democracy, well, apathy, inaction, that's the biggest threat. No matter any external factors, it's what we do dictates what happens around us.
Thank you very much, Tómas. And Nuala?
Hello everyone, my name is Nuala McAllister. I'm an Alliance MLA for North Belfast in your area, and I also went to school and to Fort William. My politics teacher's in the audience. Do you want to stand up and give us a wave, Stevie, or Mr. Jenkins? That is him
like
standing
revenge.
up like me. He needs a bit of a step as well. But I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I absolutely love the young people events because they're actually probably one of the most challenging, because I find that young people aren't afraid to ask the difficult questions. So hopefully if you've got any questions, you can throw them at us this afternoon. So I'm an MLA for North Belfast, like I said. Before that, I was a Belfast City Councillor, and I was also Lord Mayor, like my colleague Mickey Murray from the Alliance Party too, and I became an MLA in 2022. I sit in the Health Committee and the Northern Ireland Policing Board. My passions in North Belfast are around education and education reform, and also driving the economy in North Belfast, because we have an amazing constituency, so many nice cafes, restaurants, we have some beautiful parks, but we don't have enough investment in it. So that's some of the areas of my interest, but I'm really happy to be here and eager to hear your questions.
Thank you. And Matthew?
Well, hi everyone, I'm Matthew O'Toole. I'm not, unlike Tómas or Nuala, or Amanda indeed, I'm not from North Belfast, so sorry everyone. I'm not even from South Belfast originally, which is where I represent, so I really am sticking out like a sore thumb. I'm originally from Downpatrick, but I represent the amazing, there are many great constituencies in Belfast, South Belfast and North Belfast, but we don't have to fall out over which bit of Belfast's better. But I represent South Belfast for the SDLP in the Assembly. I also have the title of Leader of the Opposition, which is very grand sounding, and I'm a wee bit embarrassed about it sometimes because it sounds like I've got notions, but which I do. No, I don't. Why it's important is, as you all know, whenever we created these institutions, well, we did, and people who came before us did in 1988, we're coming out of conflict. We had this system where basically everybody was in government. We're now evolving a bit, and we've got an opposition. Now, we're quite a small opposition, but I think we're doing quite an important job of accountability. So we'll be interested in hearing all of your thoughts today about that, because I think we are now in a step change, particularly your generation, in terms of where we go in the future. There'll be big questions, including probably constitutional questions, but there'll also be questions about the big choices we want to make about how we improve society here. And I think we're hopefully moving to a slightly more grown-up way of accountability and democracy here. In terms of my immediate priorities, well, in the Assembly, it's accountability and annoying everybody and becoming the most unpopular person in the room because of my opposition role. But I'm also really interested in something which has been on my mind a lot. Well, Brexit is what got me into politics in the first place. Our European future, as it were, our relationship with the rest of this continent, I think is a huge, bright hopeful future for us back inside the European Union. I'm only in politics in the north really because of Brexit. But another thing that I'm interested in that's connected is the number of young people who leave the north every year to go to university elsewhere. So I'm interested in hearing from all of you about what might keep you here. But delighted to be here.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I think we've already settled on the fact that North Belfast is best Belfast, so there's no other debate on that. But yes, I went to St Therese of Lisieux and Belfast Royal Academy, and I understand a big mugshot of me is on the role models wall. So if you could go back and sing my praises today so the headmistress doesn't take me off the wall, that'd be great. I'm just going to ask one question about votes at 16 and then I'm going to throw it open to the floor because we have about 20 minutes, even less than that left. So quick fire questions, hopefully some quick fire answers. Obviously your three parties are committed to votes at 16, but you know there's a lot of promises and motions. What are your parties actually practically doing to make that happen? Tómas.
Well, I'm at the disadvantage of not being here. We originally brought, along with the Green Party, brought motion to Stormont back in, I think, 2011, 2012, along this lines, and obviously continue to support it. We've also introduced a bill through the Seanad in Dublin, which is at its second reading, I think. Don't quote me on that. But so we're taking practical steps to do it. I suppose it's an easy question because we're pretty much in consensus around it. But we all agree, at 16, if you're old enough to be treated like an adult in so many walks of life, surely you should be extended the right to vote and contribute to decisions that will affect the rest of your life.
Okay. And Nuala, just about what Alliance is practically doing to try and drive this forward, because there's been a lot of promises to young people, but it feels it's a little bit stuck at the minute.
So we have one MP in Westminster, Saoirse Eastwood, and we have had discussions with the government with the government opposition, like the Labour, Lib Dems and the Tories, regarding areas of interest that are in common that we can actually push together. So it's good that we have a government that is more on the side of the majority of parties here on this particular issue. So that's one way that we're practically actually pushing the issue at Westminster, because it's going to be there that there are changes that are going to be made. It's difficult when it's one MP, two MPs or just a handful, but that's why you have to work with partners, whether it's in government or opposition, to actually push through changes.
Okay, thank you. I think Matthew was saying he's the leader of the opposition. I still think politicians probably prefer Matthew to the journalists that ask them questions. I don't know. Matthew, what's the SDLP doing to make this a priority?
Thanks, Amanda. Well, I'm working on that. I'm working on my unpopularity in that regard. So a few things. You're right to say that this is one of those things that has become a kind of rhetorical thing that we're all committed to, but it doesn't really move forward. Part of our role in opposition in Stormont is holding the executive parties in the nicest possible way to account for delivering on it. Now, they will have for example, the two executive parties represented here will have a legitimate response, which is that they couldn't get it in the programme for government because basically the DUP are opposed to it. We have been pushing, though, at Stormont to make progress. So there are though elections is a reserved policy, so Westminster hold it's not a reserved, it's actually accepted, so Westminster holds the policy. You could, I think I'm right in saying, someone might correct me, you could implement it, I think, for maybe not for devolved elections, but certainly for council elections here, I think you could. At Westminster, there's actually been a wee bit of progress. Like Nuala's party, we push and have engaged and have asked questions about it in Westminster. In the last day or two, I think I'm right in saying a minister has indicated there might be a bit more progress on it at UK level. So we'll obviously keep pushing for that. I mean, basically, I think the argument is now made. There is a consensus. All but effectively one party are in that place. I think it really needs to happen sooner rather than later. And if there is some momentum that begins, obviously it's already for certain votes in Scotland, there are votes at 16. But if the momentum can start, if there is some momentum from London, I think it'll be irresistible, even for the DUP.
Okay, thank you.
No offence to the DUP, I know they're not here to defend themselves, but...
Okay, right, we're going to get a mic to you, a roving mic, if anybody has any questions. So if you could put your hand up nice and high in the air if you want to ask a question, and just wait until the microphone gets to you, because I'm making you girls get your steps in here, but we've got pressing questions for our political panel. So who wants to go first? Whose hand's up to us? Yes?
Do you see any problems with votes for people at 16?
Okay, I'll take that first. One of the areas that some people raise as a concern is regarding the participation in those votes if they were passed at 16, but I don't see that as a problem particularly just for one generation. It's actually for all generations. I don't think that's a problem either for the young people, but for education and society too, and education about politics and what elections are very important. That's why, you know, I think it was over 15 years ago we had changes like the Learning for Life and Work programme. We have had massive increase in the uptake of students who take on politics compared to even when I was just at school not long ago. So I don't see the problem and any problems lying with the actual age group 16 to 18. I think it is on us, both as politicians and the education sector, to make sure that any of the barriers in place are really addressed around education. But see, if we pass votes at 16, we will encounter the same problems that we encounter with people in their 60s, 70s, 50s, 40s. So it's about tackling the issue of politics and why people don't want to vote, and to give people something to actually vote for.
Okay. Any other questions? Just your hand up at the very back.
Amanda, can I just,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
just add on that from agreeing with what Nuala's saying? If the right was extended and people don't vote, well, that's also part of the process. You know, you have the right not to vote, and as Nuala's right to point out, that's a lot more reflective upon what's being offered and how people view the process. But when you'll hear a lot about co-design of programs and schemes when things are happening, that you need to involve people that are affected by anything that you're doing. So if you want buy-in from younger people, young adults into society, well, then you need to show them they're valued. So, like, I don't really see any issue with it. Yeah, there's plenty of people, I have friends my age, who have absolutely no sense, but they've every right to vote. You know, so any arguments that just because you might be younger, maybe a bit less experience in life, you know, it's your say still equally valid.
Okay, Matthew, yeah, it's a quick reflection.
I've never really heard any, to be honest, any good arguments for why a 16-year-old shouldn't be able to vote. And I was trying to do the thought exercise. Is there any practical, I can't think of any practical reason why a 16-year-old shouldn't be able to vote. I mean, there's a broad philosophical point that if you have more, you know, once you reach the age of 16, you are legally entitled to do lots of things. You're legally entitled to work is a really critically important thing. And once you're legally entitled to work, you are expected to pay taxes. So you enter then into one of the real most fundamental parts of the social contract. You also have certain other obligations. So I don't actually, and you can leave school, I don't actually think that there is a good logistical, philosophical reason why young people can't vote, but I think there's a really big reason why they should vote, and part of it is part of a broader challenge we have here in Northern Ireland, which is people are really turned off politics here. They're really disengaged. We have the lowest levels of trust in politics here, I think, in these islands, and part of it is that people feel really disconnected. They feel their vote is disconnected to what happens in their day-to-day lives. They feel that voting is simply a kind of, it's sending a message, as they say, rather than voting for a set of policies or a set of aspirations that might improve their lives. And I do think that extending the mandate to people at 16 is a really hopeful and kind of ambitious and actually quite exciting way of just totally changing not totally changing, but extending the debate and extending the question about, for example, the long term. A lot of the challenges they have, a lot of the challenges we have in certain democracies, that there's a high preponderance of people who are retired to vote, and that often means that you get certain policies are very embedded in certain democracies that favour, for example, people who are homeowners and who want to protect property values. I'm not saying that's an illegitimate aspiration, but I am saying that extending the voting franchise to a whole new group of people age 16 plus is a way of rethinking about certain challenges and exciting and inspiring lots of people to get involved in democracy, as Tómas and Nuala have both said.
Okay, thank you. Right, more questions, please. We're going to go for quick fire questions and hopefully some quick fire answers, if that's all right.
Could I just ask for the panel's views on if they believe the legitimacy of a government is damaged if voter turnout falls below sort of 50%. I think the UK general election's seen just shy of 60. And also, what do they think of Australian-style compulsory voting being introduced in the UK and Ireland?
Right, Matthew first.
I'll go with that. I'm not personally a fan of compulsory voting for a couple of reasons, but I won't get into all of them now. In terms of the question of legitimacy, I'm not sure you would put sort of an interesting political scientific debate. I'm not sure you would put a specific threshold on. I do think the higher the turnout, the more legitimacy you have. I think we're now at a point in northern politics here where we need to start reconnecting people to the purpose of our political institutions, particularly at the devolved level, because lots of people don't really see how they're related to their lives, and you see a lot of that in a lot of the day-to-day coverage and debate and people's views of MLAs and Stormont. So I do think you need to increase, we have relatively high, it's going down a bit, David McCann's here who will correct me, we have higher turnout than certain other places, but that doesn't mean people are like totally connected to what's happening at Stormont or they think it's entirely effective. So I don't think there's a particular numerical threshold, but I do think we need to do a lot more to increase trust here.
Okay, and Nuala?
Not supportive of compulsory voting. In Australia, where they have compulsory voting, it doesn't necessarily work there either. And I have a lot of people who are registered and entitled to vote there, who still have not voted at times, and others who have. So it doesn't seem to actually be the silver bullet that some people think that it is. I also probably wouldn't use the word legitimate either regarding the threshold below 50, because it's the price you pay for democracy, and we're a democratic society. Everyone has that right to vote or not to vote. And if those who choose not to vote outweigh those who do vote, it doesn't mean that we should get rid of democracy, no longer have a government and functioning institutions. But what it does mean is a very poor reflection on what there is to offer. And that's something certainly that every political party should look at. So I don't necessarily believe that it questions legitimacy. However, it does massively question the trust and weakens the state of government here too. Hopefully we don't come to that in Northern Ireland. Hopefully we see it on the increase, and perhaps with votes at 16 that will happen too.
Okay, and Tómas?
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines, there's clearly the more people turn out to vote, the more trust or faith would see that people maybe have in the process, but also the way that they're voting. So, you know, if we look at what government's being returned by a Westminster election, and obviously by the virtues or the joy of first past the post, it's a lot lower percentage of people have actually voted in, where, albeit with many issues that the mandatory coalition throws up here, at least we can broadly say it. There's a huge amount of people give their first preferences to the people then who've then been returned to the executive, or indeed in the opposition with Matthew. So it's clear the challenge is for us to make it appealing and to make it worthwhile. Same way we're talking that you want people to buy in. So whether there's 16 or 60 or 90. There needs to be something worthwhile on offer, and the same with, if you're talking about bringing in mandatory voting, as I said before, if people aren't voting, I mean, I view it as they're whether willing or unwilling, they're still participants in the process because they've chose not to engage. And again, that's can be an equally powerful message than whether they've turned up and spoiled the ballot or not.
Okay, and more questions, please, from over here.
Are there any current plans or actions being taken to combat the rising levels of homophobia and transphobia in the general public?
It's a great question.
So I am really disheartened and disgusted about the level of the rise in homophobia, transphobia. And I sit on the policing board, and that's one of the things that I do is actually scrutinise in detail the performance of the police in tackling that. It's not just a policing issue, it's a whole society issue. What really kind of frightens me and scares me is that a lot of the right-wing narrative around these issues in particular go on unchallenged because of the role of social media. And I think the narrative around that for the past number of years has only worsened. In particular, Donald Trump in the past few days and the so-called orders that he's signed, which I I do think will be challenged through the courts. Just it gives legitimacy to people who are fueling hatred, and I think it's the onus is on us as political representatives to actually be factual in the things that we say, but also to call it out and to challenge it, to challenge the transphobia or the homophobia in society. However, I do think that it's not just up to politicians too. I also think that the wider society has a role to play when we look at people who have platforms right across the world using their social medias to actually fuel that is just disgusting to me. I don't like the way social media gets the Bible at the minute when it comes to putting forward, what do you call it, tackling facts. Can't remember what the fact checking, yes, on social media, and how they get away with it at the minute, because it's really disheartening. It's disheartening to me as someone who was elected by people that we have no ability to actually control that at all at the minute. However, we have a debate coming up in Westminster. Saoirse Eastwood has secured around this issue in particular, particularly basing it on social media, and it's something that we can actually tackle if we hold the big media giants to account on that, but also ensure that the organisations like the PSNI actually tackle the crimes associated with these two, because without that people then can't have trust. But it's a massive issue, could speak longer, but...
Okay. Tómas?
Well, to my knowledge, there's a strategy to be brought forward by the Department of Communities along with other social inclusion strategies. But I would broaden this out a wee bit more, if you don't mind, as well. You know, when we're broadening out, there's quite a lot of issues with hatred generally across society. So, I mean, there's a end violence against women and girls strategy, and funding's come out for that. You know, we're waiting on an updated racial equality strategy being brought forward as well. There's a whole host of issues that need tackled across our society, and whether you call it tolerance on one side or maybe just a bit of human decency, you know, because if you want a bit of scope for other people's opinions, but you know, there's lines that need to be drawn and people have to be respected. Then there's tackling the, you know, what are the underlying issues of this. So whether it is on social media and it's just people hiding behind fake accounts. I was surprised Amanda was in session earlier about the rise of the far right. You just touched upon how you would react to getting abuse, and obviously yourself and Alison Morris are pretty good at combating people. I think, well, you do it quite well, but you know, it's just all too easy for people to come at others, especially from behind the computer. Whereas at least we've seen, with all the bad things that's happened over the last year in Belfast, how many times people come out to take the streets and stand shoulder to shoulder from right across society, right across classes, right across political parties. It's up to us all to combat it.
And it's part of that conversation around regulation and who is a publisher and what standards there are, and also the internet can feel a wee bit like the Wild West sometimes, where it's just open season. Matthew, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll be really quick. Thanks, Amanda. So two broad bits. Number one, at kind of Stormont, the devolved level, we are waiting lots of strategies coming forward. Tomas is right. So on some of the social inclusion strategies, which should include policies and plans and interventions to help people from the LGBT community, among other communities who have seen hate increase, including of course, the race riots in Belfast have been alluded to last year, which is disgusting to see on these streets, including in my constituency, next to my constituency office. Those social inclusion strategies are really delayed, and there's no sign of when the minister's going to bring them forward. There's also a question about, we've encouraged and we would like to see the Justice Minister have a standalone hate crime bill, which isn't just part of a separate bill. So that's the devolved level. There's also the racial equality strategy, which is another thing we're waiting on from the executive. So there's lots of things we're nudging, pushing, trying to get the executive to make progress on. But then there's the bigger question, which is hate and hate online. And is that the determining factor that all of our lives are now governed by these things? And there are they're not faceless. Sadly, we see their faces all the time now. Gazillionaires who have a vested interest in us being really angry and hating people all the time. And that kind of attention economy feeds their business model, and we've all been taken for that ride. And I think a lot of us didn't realise it. We signed up, and we probably, even at times when it seemed innocuous, I've got really angry at times about a tweet that someone said something about Brexit, and it's really annoyed me, and I've got really angry. Well, that's the same kind of economy that drives some of the worst kind of misogynistic, homophobic, racist, transphobic hate that you see. I don't think we've got our heads around that yet. I think that's one of the challenges of the 21st century, because it's connected to humanity's relationship with technology and the fact that there are these unaccountable multi-billionaires who have all this power. So it's going to have to happen at EU level. One of the things I'm worried about is the EU is going to start to roll back on some of these regulations of tech. So it's a big transnational, multinational challenge that we're committed to playing our part in, but we are only one small part of.
Okay, we've got time for one final question. Do any of the girls want to ask any questions, or?
Okay, so this is a question for Matthew. How do you ensure effective and relevant party scrutiny against the executive whenever it's already a built-in area with the power-sharing government?
Well, I don't think scrutiny is totally built in with power sharing. I think we've noticed that. I think we have kind of helped nudge a step change. To answer your question, how do we do it? Well, we get MLAs. We're not in opposition, and we can't pretend we're in opposition like, you know, in London or Dublin, where we might replace the government. It doesn't work like that here, but we do need to be effective, so we need to pick key areas. Basically, we need to do what the executive isn't doing yet, which is prioritise, not try and fight every battle, and not be unreasonable or desperate about it. That's why the phrase we've used is constructive opposition.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Was there one final question, or are we, yeah, from the girl with the dark hair? And it has to be quick question, quick answers, please, because there's buses to get.
This is a question for Nuala. Do you think that the Alliance Party should be given more powers in terms of party consent?
Well,
That's an easy one.
that is.
Yes.
I mean, yes, quickly, yes. But one of the areas of priority for us pushing with the UK government, the Irish government, is the issue of reform in the institutions, so that nobody like Sinn Féin or DUP can decide, don't want to be in an executive anymore, I haven't gotten what I've wanted, things aren't going my way, I'm walking away, and then the rest of society has to suffer. That is what we want to see. Reform of the institutions, a government by consent, power sharing by consent would be a great way, but also entitlement and getting rid of designations, ensuring people and parties who are cross-community, that their cross-community votes actually count in all voting patterns in the Assembly.
Okay.
That was quick enough.
Thank you. A big round of applause, please, for Matthew, Nuala and Tómas. We're going to hear from the Director of Politics in Action, Paul Smith.
I want to thank you all for participating today, and there's been great energy in the room and in the workshops and stuff, and that's really what today was about. We wanted to give you a chance to talk to each other and to learn from some of the great workshop providers that we brought together. So I hope you've all enjoyed the day. I have a few things that I want to just tell you about that are coming up. First of all, a lot of you went to the Votes at 16 workshop, and even for those of you who didn't get to it, we have a campaign group of young people from right across Northern Ireland. And during the workshops, I think some of you said that you'd like to become part of that group. If you just follow Politics in Action on our socials, we're on everything pretty much, just message us and we'll get back to you and get you to join the group. It's a particularly important time with that campaign because the Labour government have said they will introduce Votes at 16. We're trying to get it introduced in time for the 2027 elections here, and that means that actually we need to start the process very, very soon if that's going to happen, and if we're going to have the curricular reform that needs to happen in time for Votes at 16 here. And in Scotland and Wales, it was the parliaments that introduced Votes at 16, but that's not going to happen here because one of the 5 main parties is opposed to it. But it will happen in Westminster, so we need to switch our energies into lobbying MPs. The Mayor earlier mentioned a special event on the 22nd of April. So there was an American politician called Harvey Milk, who was the first openly gay elected representative in America, and he was assassinated just a year after he was elected. But his nephew, who's called Stuart Milk, created a foundation called the Harvey Milk Foundation, and they do an enormous amount of work in the US on promoting tolerance and particularly encouraging people to respect the rights of the LGBTQ community. I think particularly at a time when the American president has just denied huge numbers of people the right to define their own gender, It's extremely important that we engage with organisations like this. So on Saturday, the 22nd of February, we're having an event at City Hall with Mickey and with Stuart Milk, it's actually going to be in the council chamber. We'll be putting details of that out in our socials next week. So if you're interested in coming along to that event, please message us. My third announcement is, has anybody heard of George Mitchell? Yeah, he was the guy who chaired the Good Friday Peace Agreement talks. He's a former senator from the US. On the 16th of April, he's coming to Queen's University, and he's going to give a talk to young people from across the island of Ireland. And we've been asked to bring young people from Northern Ireland to that event. We will be inviting all of your schools. Your schools will actually get the first choice on tickets for that. And we'll be inviting schools from right across the island of Ireland. So keep an eye out for that as well. I know that it falls during the Easter holidays for some of you. And if you can't come through your school, connect with us and you can come anyway. But I'm hoping schools will actually be able to get transport organised to get you there. So thank you all for participating so well today. This has been a partnership between us, the Education Authority Shared Education Team, and Belfast City Council. And then also we have some funding from the Community Relations Council. So all of those things together have allowed us to put the day together, and I hope you found it very worthwhile.
We're just going to have a quick word from Jane Sims from the Education Authority, and then I believe you lot have buses to get on. Thank you.
I am acutely aware that I am the person holding you up from your weekend starting, so this is going to be very short. And really all I want to do is say a few thank yous. I have to give a shout out to East Belfast, if that's okay. So that's where I'm from. Boo. Okay. But also to say, who's your woman? Why is she standing up here? And I suppose I'm standing up here as one of the funders from today. So I want to say a big thank you to our politicians for coming last thing this afternoon. I want to say a big thank you to Politics in Action, who have created all of this. To all of our speakers today, to our workshop leaders, and really importantly to Amanda, who has, I don't know how she's done it, maybe it's this massive clock that's right in front of her here, but she has kept us on target and on task all afternoon, so thank you. But also really, yep. But also, really, really importantly, this doesn't mean anything if we don't have our young people sitting in front of us. So, as a previous Methodist College girl, I'm going to shout out to all of the schools who are here today. I had the privilege and pleasure of walking around and listening. Your voices were well heard today. You spoke extremely eloquently, better than I'm doing right now, but that's because I'm thinking about my Friday night glass of wine. So, one very, very final plug. Thank you to everybody who was here. I heard from Mickey earlier on about using your voice. If this is the kind of stuff that you like doing, please talk to your teachers, please talk to your schools. We can make this happen. My day job, my 9-to-5 job, is as the EA lead for Peace Plus and the new Aspire programme. We have a little bit of money, and I'm not afraid to say that. So if there's teachers out there, if you yourselves are passionate about hearing from our politicians, from doing more workshops, there's ways how we can maybe support you to do that. So look, on that really positive note, thank you, and thank you so much for your participation today.